What does performance mean?
Good to great.
So how do we move from good to great? The difficulty with good performance, of course, is that you don't have forward momentum. Most organisations do want to get somewhere. Then we actually need everyone to be great.
Because who's going to say no to the idea of we want everybody to be great? I mean, I'm sure every company would love to subscribe to that, right?
Today, we're joined by Alex Biviano, General Manager of People and Culture at Learning Links, a not-for-profit organisation dedicated to supporting children with learning difficulties and disabilities. With over 15 years of experience in HR, leadership and business transformation, Alex discusses performance, trust and how to go from good to great.
Alex, welcome to the Martian Logic podcast. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Why don't you let people know what you do for a living?
Sure. So my name's Alex Biviano. I'm the General Manager of People and Culture at Learning Links. Learning Links is a not-for-profit. We've been around for over 50 years helping kiddos with learning difficulties and disabilities. And that's across New South Wales, but also extending out nationally as well. So
How do you do that? You've got your own centres where people bring their kids there and
yeah,
for the day kind of thing? You maybe explain it a bit?
absolutely. Yeah. So we offer psychology services, speech therapy, education, OT. We've got a preschool. We also run community programs. So we help kiddos in clinic, in our offices around Sydney, but also online. And then we also go into schools. So we've got a network of over 100 schools across New South Wales.
Okay.
And yeah, we're kind of there embedded in the classroom and in group programs as well. So
And your role in the company is?
General Manager, People and Culture. So, yeah, I'm very lucky to work with an amazing leadership team and sit, reporting directly into the CEO and involved in the strategy and the direction of the organisation, which is just so exciting.
How's it different from HR manager?
Oh, well, look, I think there's a strategic element to it in terms of the planning. So there's a lot more kind of involvement with the board, with the leadership team, moving the organisation forward, moving through things like change, project management, evolution of the organisation, revolution maybe sometimes as well. So yeah, I think it's a different kind of level in terms of the level of strategic thinking that's required in the position and the long range planning as well. Okay, so I thought that we could talk about good to great, which is this concept of what does performance mean?
Good to great.
Yes. What does it mean to be good? What does it mean to be great? How do we articulate what those two things are? And also, how do we move from good to great? Because I think everyone can relate to having, someone in their team who is a good performer. And sometimes, they can be someone who is hitting their goals, but they're never kind of bringing innovation. They might not be bringing new ideas, new ways of working, but they are kind of broadly getting things
Good.
done. Yeah,
They're
right?
good.
Good performer. The difficulty with good performers, of course, is that you don't have forward momentum. So, what you lose out on is that your organization, if you're prizing good, is going to remain pretty static. It's not going to grow. It's not going to move forward. You're not going to see new kind of vibrant energy coming into the team, coming into your processes.
If everybody's just good.
That's right.
You need a high percentage or at least percentage of your people to be great.
Yeah, and I think actually it's kind of flipping that view and saying it's okay to be a good performer, it's okay to be a great performer, and everyone's got their own journey to kind of saying, as an organisation, if we want to get somewhere, and most organisations do want to get somewhere, then we actually need everyone to be great. And what does that mean if we want everyone to be great? If that's our aspiration, then how do we kind of convert that into action? And I think that's
Because who's going to say no to the idea of we want everybody to be great? I mean, I'm sure every company would love to subscribe to that, right?
yes.
If they think they can do it.
Yes, and then it's kind of the how. And I think this is the tricky thing for HR people particularly, and people and culture people, like we call it in our organisation, is really, well, how do you get that? And, one of the things that we say at Learning Links is that leaders need to lead. And so what we do is we act as a coach, as someone to stand by our leaders, to work in partnership with them, but they've kind of got to lead that agenda with their people. So if you've got someone who's an average performer, if we just look at an example here, and it's really about understanding why. Why would that person be showing up, doing their time, and heading home? And I think there's an element of human behavior here.
That's the good performer.
Yeah, just
Okay.
the basic good performer. And there's an element of motivation. there's an element of doing purpose-led work, and I think we all have had jobs where we've just shown up and done some good
I'm
things.
just intuitively trying to think about what you said, just out of respect to what you said. If I can just play that on me, why, at which point in time or projects I'm involved in, why would I be just good? And what's the environment that makes me really great? Just give you my intuitive response to that would be, you're right, the purpose is amazing.
Yeah.
The purpose, and that there is an event that's going to happen where people get acknowledged and good things are going to happen, and we're going to reveal that success, and that's when people get motivated towards the goal and that kind of event when this is going to be completed and something's going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess that's a purpose.
Absolutely. And it could be like, the outcome of the work as well. Like it could be that, the purpose of rolling out this program or rolling out a performance cycle, the purpose for me is that everyone's going to feel really aligned around what their goals are and what they need to get done. And if they feel really aligned, then they're going to understand their job better. They're going to have more employee, happiness and satisfaction and engagement. They're going to be coming to work happier. And that's ultimately going to result in a better culture. So I think it's kind of about framing, like everything can be purpose-led. And I'm just talking there about, we started with running a performance cycle. It could be anything. It could be connected to social impact. Obviously for us, a lot of the work that we do, all of our work actually, is really connected in with social impact.
There's a big difference between being someone involved in your company of making a 5-year-old have a better hope in life than building a piece of software in my business. It's a huge difference. That's almost the two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. And, I'll tell you a personal story. Like when I started my career, I was working in manufacturing, in aluminium manufacturing. And then I went to work in mining, oil and gas, energy, engineering companies. So my whole career, I've been so interested in technical, scientific sort of organizations. Always worked really closely with IT teams, just thrive in that sort of highly technical environment. And then when I had my little boy, I think there was a real shift in my priorities. And previously I had wanted to be part of those male-dominated industries, which, some of the industries I worked in were 85, 90% male.
Yep.
And I wanted to kind of advocate for women, to advocate for change, to advocate for gender equality, to be part of the conversation. And there was something in me that changed, and I really felt like social impact, it became more important to me, and purpose at work became more important to me. And I didn't, in those technical industries, I no longer felt a connection to the purpose of the organization. So even though the organization had a great purpose, a great reason for being, I worked with an energy provider, obviously, the purpose of keeping the lights on, keeping everyone having all their devices charged and all of the energy that they need. So important. But I just couldn't actually connect that with my own personal motivation. And I think that is an important piece for performance, because when you can connect your work and the organization's work, with a sense of purpose, that it changes things for you.
Okay. So maybe can we break it up this way? So we're talking about performance. And in particular, you want to talk about how you take a person, an employee, or the whole team, but let's say one person at a time, one employee at a time. How do we take them from good to great? Take their performance from good to great. Is there any kind of system? Is there like 3 major steps that are important, key steps or key things that need to be done? Can we break it down that way, or
absolutely?
What would be the top 3 things?
Well, I feel like there's a couple of bit of foundation sort of works that have been really good for us, that have helped us to then take those 3 key steps. So let's just have a think about those first. So like one of the first things we did is strengths, Gallup, Clifton strengths. So the whole kind of concept of the strengths methodology is it's grounded in positive psychology, and it's about if you spend
the strength of a person.
Yeah, like your top 5 strengths, like the things that you are best at.
Okay.
And if you spend time investing in your strengths, you're going to get a bigger return than if you spend a huge amount of time investing in things that you're actually not very good at.
Interesting.
You just won't get the return.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what we did is we got everyone in our organization to do this strengths assessment, identify their top 5 and gave them really detailed reports on kind of what that means. And then we said to them, we want you to play to your strengths. So, as you are going about your work, understand that you have an opportunity based on who you uniquely are. And I guess that did 2 things for us. Is one, it created a focus on the individual and a bit of, it's like a gateway to self-discovery, right? For people to say, I didn't actually realize that I've been doing, the sorts of jobs I've been attracted to have always had an arranger strength or an achiever element or a strategic thinking element to them. And like for me, one of my strengths, my top one actually, is positivity, which you may or may not have noticed. And so
100% noticed.
And so, strengths go both ways, right? We had to be really careful to understand our strengths, but also not overplay them. So, when I'm in quite a difficult employee relations communication, like I'm talking to an employee perhaps about their performance or serious misconduct or something like that, I don't want to overplay the positivity strength because there's a level of seriousness that needs to come to that conversation. So we did the individual kind of gateway to self-discovery first. And that then gave people a platform to talk about, well, now I understand my strengths. What are your strengths to their team members?
Mm-hmm.
And then once the team members came together and kind of understood, okay, I've got all these executing strengths. So I'm going to be really good at closing projects, at getting things done, at moving the task list. Whereas other people had these influencing strengths. They were networkers. They were great at talking to people and kind of influencing people as well on decisions. And so those people were like, great, well, we're going to work together because we know that this project's going to require X, Y, Z, and we're going to have to work together to get that using both of our strengths.
So what are we saying here, Alex? We're saying we're talking about a process or an environment at work that will help to get people to move from being in their performance to be a good performance to a great performance. And you're saying understanding the strengths and working around the strengths of people is one of these key things.
Absolutely, yeah. And that really
what
helped
else in
us.
that big picture before we start to zoom into any particular topic, which is I'll give you plenty of room to do that. Just at high level, if you let us know where we're heading with this. We're talking about how we move someone from being good to being great in their performance at what they do in their craft. What are sort of the 3 things, or what's that journey that we're going to be covering over the next couple of hours? Can you just summarize it for us in sort of 3 maybe things or 4 things, or what are we saying here?
Yeah, so the foundation pieces for us were strengths, and the second foundation piece was high-performing teams, concept by Patrick Lencioni. So that's a really, really interesting kind of model. And we spent a lot of time talking to our team about that. And we've got a huge amount of bounce from that.
Okay.
And then kind of the 3 steps, like if we were going to divide it into
3, 4, 5,
here. It was really around communicating that vision. I mean, one of the pieces of feedback that we got from our engagement survey is that people understood we had a strategic vision and they were really invested in that. But they just kind of weren't clear on what their piece was in getting there. And if you can't align your people behind your vision or your reason for being, then it disconnects them from the purpose of what they're doing. So that was the first piece.
Okay, so these are the 3 things that we're going to be covering. Is there anything else?
Yeah, the goal setting was another really important piece.
Okay, so let me repeat it back to you.
Yeah.
You want to cover not necessarily everything, but what you believe are very important aspect of a program or an environment that will encourage taking people who are just good performers to be great performers. And you've identified, amongst others, 3 or 4 things, and that's to understand the strengths of people, and then we will talk about what that means and how we can work with them to help with that journey. You've identified the so-called high-performance team concept based on some author book, etc. And you've got the communicating the company through HR, through the leaders, to communicate the vision of what we are trying to do, that journey of taking people from good to great. And you talked about goal setting as well.
Yes.
All right, let's go in any order that you like.
Okay, and the final one, I'm just going to put one on the list there as well,
please.
Is around feedback. So that continuous feedback loop is something that's actually really hard to keep going and so critically important to keep working on.
Okay.
So yeah, that's probably the other thing.
5. Perfect.
I know. Okay.
When you're ready, we're going to strength. You talked a little bit about it, but just in it's just a little bit, if you were to summarize the strength here, what we are talking about, how understanding and working with strength is a key component to move someone from being good to great.
Yeah, look, I think sometimes in our jobs we get stuck, right? We start our careers, we have a qualification, and maybe we move into a job that, needs that qualification. And we kind of progress and continue, and sometimes there aren't reflective moments. And that's certainly, what we kind of call milestone moments at Learning Links. And they're the moments where you have an opportunity to reflect on your career and which direction you want to go in, and to kind of make a plan for yourself, right? Like, your life plan almost, your career plan, or how you want to, where you want to go, what you want to be talking about every day. Because we spend so much time at work. It's got to be something you love doing, and something you're excited about as well. So I think the strengths really helped us to just make sure that people hadn't forgotten to do that bit of reflective element. And like, as an example, one of my strengths is a ranger. So that basically is like a conductor. So it's the person who's able to say, okay, we've got the orchestra in front of us, and now we're going to bring in the cello, and we're going to now bring in the drums, and over here with the harp. And it's bringing all of those elements together and keeping all those like balls in the air, right, at the same time. And that's been a very helpful strength for me to progress to where I am now, because I've been able to deliver consistently by, keeping all of these things going at the same time. And we also found that people who had very, high kind of learning strengths, so things that aligned with the growth mindset, like the learner or developer strength, we knew that those people were going to be invested in working with others and developing others. So then that gives you, if you've got all of your strengths profiles done across your organization, it kind of gives you this rich data to go, okay, I've got a really strong achiever element. So I know people are going to be very focused on goal delivery and performance. And I've got a really strong learner element. So I know people are going to be invested in their PD. They're going to want to learn. They'll be hungry for, the option to teach others, to share knowledge, to even share articles or websites or whatever. And then I've got this high kind of relationship domain strength. So we've got people who are going to want to work with others to get things done. So what that means is that, committees and opportunities to collaborate will actually create energy in the organization.
Okay.
So I guess it's what you do with your data, isn't it? Like, once you know something, what are you going to do with that?
For that team, if you're looking at a group of people and you're trying to help them and their manager to take that team, those group of people to a grade, you're saying you've got to start by understanding what the strength of each of these individuals are.
Yeah.
And then when you put them to work on a certain task or whatever, there's an alignment about their strength and the value they can add to that project or that kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that sounds very logical.
It does. But I think that it doesn't necessarily happen all the time, right?
No. But it sounds very logical. I'm agreeing with you.
Like, sometimes
I don't think anybody looks at it like that. No,
like we get committees and project teams together, and we just kind of go, look, that person has a bit of expertise in this area. But what if you actually built your project teams, your committees?
You hear people talking about,
this.
what they say in job descriptions, experience and a blah, 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 qualification experience. They never talk about what's really, really the strength of that person, psychologically speaking, their nature, what is in their DNA. Are they good connectors? Are they good socializers, etc.? Or are they, because they could be the greatest introvert in the world, yet they are so goddamn good on a bunch of things. So just a matter of understanding the strengths and the weaknesses, you're saying.
Yeah.
You don't hear that in an HR environment settings or that's an interesting approach to this.
Yeah, and I think it's been a really great thing for our leaders to then reflect on their teams and say, oh, I've got a lot of people with executing strengths. So that's why we're getting all of our work done. But I don't have any people who are thinking about the future, who have those strategic thinking
That's
strengths.
An interesting example.
So, we're getting stuff done. Absolutely. And that is a measure of performance, getting things done.
Are we reinventing ourselves every 2 years? Maybe not.
Yeah, but we're not
So the long term is not looking good.
Yes.
But at the moment, we are killing it every week and every quarter and every year.
Yeah, but we're not hungry for the next challenge, the next revolution, the next actual kind of big way of working.
What would you call that strength? The people that have got the sort of visionaries and what have you come across that?
Yeah, there's a whole domain in Gallup Clifton Strengths called strategic thinking. So there's a number of different strengths that sit underneath that.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting domain. Like we've got this amazing leader that I work with, and she's got 5 strengths in strategic thinking. And I remember her saying to me the other day, I'm just basically a big head. I'm just thinking all the time about what's coming up next, like, what the world could look like. And so, that person does a wonderful job at helping others to see the future. Right? To say, I know we do it this way now, but what if we did this? What if we did that? And one of the things that we're working towards at the moment is impact, right? So if we see 7,000 kids across Australia annually, and we want to make a bigger impact, then we need to be seeing 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. And so you need strategic thinkers to kind of give you those big ideas on how you're going to get there. But of course, you need the balance of your executors who are going to get the work done. And you need the balance of your relationship people who are going to build, build those good relationships who are going to get things done with others.
Okay, so can I try to, I don't want to say summarize, but trying to explain how I understood why we're talking about strengths when we're talking about helping a team to go from being good to being great.
Yeah.
So, for example, when we're talking about a team, you're talking about a project or a task where you've got multiple people working on it. You've got to find that right dynamic, that right, what's the word here? The right mixture of, you're saying, in that great example that you gave me that brought it home for me, the strategic thinker versus the executor, the guy that's disciplined, that knows how to finish the job on time, and have that nice balance in there and create an environment where both are encouraged to speak and have a seat at the table, and you end up with the best outcome where things are done on time, but yet the long-term vision is always taken care of as well.
Exactly. And you kind of intentionally want to recruit for that as well. So like with our strengths mix, leaders now understand where and it's not a gap that they have in their team, but where they might not have as much bench strength, right? And so they can actually say, you know what, I've got so many influencers in my team, which is super, but I actually just need some roles who are going to have a stronger focus on executing.
So do you think your organization would be, just to bring this whole conversation home for a listener as well, so do you think your organization would be at some point in time even having this kind of conversation as part of the job ad? For example, looking for someone ideally with these strengths.
Exactly.
Would you start to use that word even in job ad?
Yeah. You pepper it through everything, right? So, you would put it through the job ad. You could put it into the interviewing questions. It could be part of the selection criteria almost. And remember that you're not trying to fill every single gap. You're not trying to have representation of every single strength.
It's a wish list in many ways. And, you're dealing with people. It's not a product off the shelf that ABCD. You look at someone, you go, you're a superstar, I know we're going to hire them regardless whether they have that or not sometimes, But yeah, so ideally though, you start to use that word strength as opposed to experiences and qualifications.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yes. And then, I think it's like everything where, I personally love data. I love looking through information and drawing inferences from it. It's why I've always loved engagement surveys. It's why, Excel and I are good buds. And I just love all of those metrics as well. So I think that's another element, of performance is really what is your data telling you? And we're not measuring every daily task, with our KPIs. We're kind of measuring the things that matter. And that's a really important kind of piece to consider with the strengths.
Alex, thank you. Finally, I got it. And that example that you gave really, boom, made perfect sense. Thank you so much for that. Just to reframe what we are talking about here. You're talking about how we take an individual at work or a whole team from being just good in their performance to being great. You've identified 5 areas and we started with strengths. We covered that very nicely, I believe, unless you have anything else to say.
No, good on that.
Thank you so much. The next point, if you want to talk about it in that order, I've got here written for some reason anyway, in terms of the order, high performance team.
Yes. So there's this great individual called Patrick Lencioni, and definitely worth a look up.
What does he do? Is he like a professor or something? Or?
Yeah. He's written this amazing book on, I think it's called The 5 Dysfunctions of Teams. But
I've read this.
Yes. So look,
about 10 years ago.
My
Love that
positivity
book.
brain reframes it as the 5, best functions
I love
of
that
teams.
book.
But yeah. So, Patrick Lencioni has got lots of TED Talks, lots of content online, website.
I've never come across him or connected him, maybe, and I can't remember his name, but I certainly read that book about 10 years ago.
Yes,
I really enjoyed it.
So, I think sometimes new models come out and we sort of gravitate towards what is new and interesting. But actually, I think there's a lot of value in kind of coming back and revisiting the basics and the foundations every now and again. And I do really think that Patrick Lencioni's model has a lot to offer. So,
what's that model? Talk to us about that. Okay. A lot of people don't even know who he is.
So it's a pyramid, right? And what you're saying is that the foundation of the pyramid is trust. So it's the most important function to have in high-performing teams. So,
I agree with that.
Yeah, right. So it's all based on trust. And the second one is conflict. So
so interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting. One of the people who, just like yourself, opened my mind about these kind of topics and educated me is Rachel Clements. She's an organizational psychologist. And, her big thing was is the psychologically safe space. But,
so important.
The basic of that is also trust.
Yeah.
You're speaking the same thing.
I know. And it's challenging. I mean, you see this in the workplace. Everyone does, when there's a breach of trust, everything, it's a domino effect.
Yes.
It's all related back to that. And so, even the psychological safety stuff is so important. So Google, and maybe she talked about this already, but Google did this great piece of work called Project Aristotle, which I think has been talked about to death. But they looked internally at their teams to identify what high-performing teams did that their other teams didn't. And psychological safety was right up there. It's the most...
I would say it's everything.
Yeah.
From my own experiences, since that interview with Rachel, I kept connecting almost everything that I've ever felt in my heart without being, taught or learned like yourself about the topic, being an HR professional. Yeah. I connected it almost to everything. It is like the mothership.
Yeah.
It is. It's really not a small thing.
No, it isn't. And it's like, it can be actually quite hard to build if you are coming from an environment that is a bit toxic, right? Because you have to really build that back up, and it requires trust, and it requires risk, and it requires a perspective that it's okay to take risk and we want to fail quickly and come back from that. And that's how we innovate. And that can be really hard for leaders who, particularly if you've got high performing, high achiever leaders who always want to be successful, those leaders may struggle to create psychological safety. If you've got, leaders who don't know how to coach and have those relationship sort of skills to develop others.
That's the accidental manager.
Yeah. Look,
someone who's technically good at something, just like myself. And myself as CEO, you're going to manage people. I never signed up for that.
Got this whole list of things to know. Yeah.
Although now I take it as a challenge, and I so want to succeed at it. I started to enjoy it and see why it's a good thing for me to become that person. But I really never signed up to that. I was a tech guy. I was an inventor.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do, invent a product, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so common, isn't it? That move from technical into management. People see it as the next step. It's not a next step.
And technical guys, I'm not necessarily referring to IT technical.
No.
Technical could be anything. A psychologist, for example, that's technical work. Their technical work is psychology.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, they're managing 50 psychologists. Well, hello. What do they know about that?
Yeah, and it's really challenging, isn't it? Because, one of the things that I've always tried to do throughout my career working with technical people and everything that I do, and at the moment it's with allied health and education technical professionals as well as corporate services too, is to build a technical career path that's really solid so that they can see, I don't need to go into management if that's kind of not where I'm inclined to want to be, that I've got an opportunity here to rise to a really high level, to be the top of my game, to be the clinical lead, or, the head of, the person who can then connect in with universities. And
Okay.
yeah, so
the high performance team, that concept is from, I'm sorry, what was his name?
Patrick Lencioni.
Lencioni? Okay.
Yes.
And you're saying it's a pyramid. He sees that as a pyramid.
Trust is
and
at the bottom.
The bottom is trust.
Yes.
Okay. And what's above that?
The second one is conflict, right? So this is welcoming conversation and welcoming a bit of conflict into your team.
This is unbelievable. This is coming back to this psychologically safe environment.
Yes.
Where you're able to not only talk about something that's controversial, but even if it's a stupid idea and when people laugh at you, you will never want to talk about creative stuff again. How can you have a creative environment if people are frowned upon if they say it's something that's stupid? How can you ever invent anything? This team is doomed from a creative point of view if every idea has to be so goddamn polished and perfect before it's actually thrown around.
Yeah, that's
so
it.
You know what I mean? It's so interesting.
Yeah. And look, this is, once you've got that really amazing trust, you can have great conversations, right? Because you know that it's a safe environment.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you know that you can put your
You're
hand up.
not going to lose your job
Totally.
if you said something controversial, or if you disagreed strongly with someone, or if you made the CEO's idea look not great or something. It has to come from a trust. You're absolutely right. Otherwise, if you just say it to people, it means nothing. It has to be demonstrated over and over again that there's a trust.
Yes.
And therefore, those kind of controversial and conflicting, if you like, conversations, they will be okay. No one's going to be apprehended and lose their job because of them.
Completely. Yeah. And, it's so important to have those conversations, so that you can commit to what you're going to do, which is the next level of the pyramid, right?
Which is?
So commitment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
So we're
talking about trust at the bottom, conflict in the middle, and then commit. Is there anything you still want to talk about conflict, just to make sure we hear it from you?
Yes.
Trust, then commit. What's commit?
Yeah, look, I think...
I'm sorry, conflict. I beg your pardon.
No, that's all right. So I think with conflict, you have to be able to have those challenging conversations, and then you need to be able to commit to them. Now, of course, you can't commit to something unless everyone's, or
commit to them? To the outcomes from the conversations,
correct.
you mean?
Yeah. So commit to the plan or the way forward or what we're going to do
next. From
next.
That environment where people are comfortable to be controversial, comfortable to disagree, etc.
Yes.
So there's an outcome that decided through this environment, and you're saying one thing is to encourage people to have challenging conversations, but how about the outcome? Is it going to really happen, or are you going to go back, you and a couple of people have a conversation, decide and alone decide what's going to happen?
Yeah,
that's brilliant. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, and look, the commitment and the accountability are the two kind of next stages of the pyramid, and I think those two are really important, because if you don't have that conflict conversation, then what happens is people say, yeah, I'm on board with that. I'm going to commit to that. Then they walk out of the room and they're chatting to somebody, saying, I don't know what they were talking about. That's not going to work for XYZ reason. So it's so important that you get that commitment, and you can only have that if you have that solid conversation and you encourage that conflict, and you can only have that solid conversation if you have trust. So, this is why I think Patrick Lencioni's high-performing teams model is really interesting and really relevant as well for us as P&C or HR professionals.
So the trust is going to help with people who were part of that challenging conversation where conflicts occurred during that conversation. The trust is going to help them to trust, right, that the outcome will be committed.
Yeah. And
management is serious about that is serious about giving seat to people at the table, and therefore the process and decisions are made through these conversations.
Yeah,
this is not just a side show, and the real decisions are made somewhere else, different form.
That's right. And look, there's so many different models on how to run a meeting, how to agree things, how to invite everyone's opinions into the room. how to make decisions, all of that. There's so many different things that you can riff off there. But I think if you are not having a solid conversation, then people aren't going to be accountable for those results, and they're certainly not going to commit to them.
Internally, I so thank you, Alex, for bringing this back to my memory and explaining this. Because as I mentioned, the reason you're here and other great people in your field that I'm speaking with over our podcast is because the journey I'm on. And you know what as I mentioned before, Alex, some of the decisions I've been making, they're complete intuitive. You know, I know this is right for the health of the team or for the health of the company. And I've been making them without reading in a book or someone, a management professional telling me how to do it. And I've never studied anything to do with management. And so what's interesting here and what I was sort of alluding to, I've been for the last probably at least now 12 months using the word quality of the conversation. And that's internal. Every conversation, if I'm talking, if the AMs are talking, the account managers, if the sales team is talking, every single team internally, and of course, equally our conversations external with the clients.
Yeah.
Whether it's a support conversation, account management conversation, etc. The quality of the conversation, but especially for me, literally the way I rate myself right now, every conversation I want it to be a quality conversation. If I walk away from a conversation and I felt the quality was low, I am so upset with myself for the next few hours and trying to think, why did I do this? How could I have done it better? This is my biggest metric for me right now as a human being, as a person, is the quality of the conversation.
Yeah.
And especially like when you know that was a difficult conversation and you know what? It was amazing. Walked out from it, everybody feeling good about it. And I go, yes, I celebrate it. It's like the most important thing for me right now is the quality of the conversation.
And isn't it hard to measure that, you know? Because sometimes you think, wow, we got through so much, but was it quality? You know, or was it quantity that we got through? Or we actually spent kind of a lot of time getting off topic, but it was furthering another thing that we're going to come back to, which is innovation or, you know, strategic thinking. So it's so hard to measure that, right?
Yeah,
I think you've really set yourself up there for a tricky measurement, but you're so right because you intuitively know when a conversation lands, don't you? Yeah. And like that psychological safety,
otherwise
the trust.
You're lying to yourself. You're delusional if you don't realize that someone, from the way they reacted, if you can't read the room and body's language, and you know that someone was oppressed directly or indirectly or whatever, and you left the meeting without acknowledging that and do something about it and make sure they feel good about it. Come on, you're delusional.
Yeah, that's
not leadership. You got to face it. And you've got to admit when you stuffed up.
Yeah. And look, you know, it kind of probably leads us nicely into feedback, right? And those continuous feedback loops, because the quality is so important in those conversations. And what we say to our leaders is that you should prepare for those conversations, and that, you know, sometimes when we go into something without preparation, the message doesn't land because we haven't kind of considered what the other person's response will be. Sometimes we actually blur the feedback, so they're kind of unclear what we're talking about. And you can see this happening all the time when a leader is unhappy with something that someone in their team has done, and they say to them, you know, just have some concerns and just like you to work a little bit harder. You know, these are all very blurry things. What does concerns mean? What does work harder mean? We're not actually getting to the heart of the issue, which might be, you know, in that meeting with that client, you spoke over the top of me and it made us look unprepared,
of course,
in front of the client.
Well, unprofessional.
Not
nice for human beings.
Yes.
Oh my God, where do you want to start?
Yeah, right. So that's the
You could do it accidentally, but you've got to bring it back. Oh, I'm really sorry, and acknowledge it and be a lead about it and face it, as opposed to just think it's an ego thing or whatever and keep moving. Oh my gosh, it's terrible.
So that's the difference between specific feedback and general feedback. And so that, you know, the quality of the conversation, we say, you know, is really based off the preparation that you do, and making sure that feedback is really specific.
Preparation that you do.
Yeah. So we use this tool called the Feedback Prep Grid, which is from...
Oh, I want to really challenge that.
Yes. Yeah.
Why preparation is going to make sure you got nice, good human beings and people that respect each other on the call.
Yeah. Look, I think the preparation is for giving feedback to people. So if let's just say you've got to have
preparing for a meeting with a client.
Yeah.
How is that feedback? Sorry.
So if we take it out of the client concept,
Sure.
and then just say, let's say the client meeting has happened, and after the fact, you want to give some feedback
Sure.
to one of the
Sure.
team,
Sure.
and about
How's
something.
that preparation?
Well, we want to prepare for what
For
we're
the
going
next meeting, maybe.
No, we want to prepare the way that the feedback is going to be received. So rather than saying, I think we need to work harder, everyone, we want to say, hey, in that meeting, this happened, this specific behavior happened. The impact of that was X, Y, Z. What can we do differently next time, guys? And that's kind of, I guess, landing
I'm trying to
the
see
feedback.
where the word preparation in here. Sorry, what am I missing? That's the feedback. I totally agree, and it's
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
What's the preparation?
The preparation is for, it's kind of spending the time understanding how you're going to give the feedback so that it lands. Because have you ever spoken to someone?
Because we're discussing now the feedback loop, yeah?
Yes.
And so in that pyramid, just to make sure I know where you are right now, with the trust, the conflict, the commit, and the accountability.
Yep.
And what's at the top? Is that it?
Results.
Goals,
Yep.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
results.
Sorry.
Yeah. So
results.
yeah.
Sorry.
So I think Patrick Lencioni calls it the inattention to results.
A what? Attention?
Inattention to results. I think
Inattention?
that's what it's called. You'll have to fact check me on that.
Inattention. What does that mean? Regardless of what the word is, what does he mean by?
Yeah. So just not focusing on the results that we're trying to go for.
If you do all that good, you mean the results will be good? Is that what he means?
Yeah. Look, I think he's just saying that if you've got trust, then you can have really good high conflict kind of conversations, hear everyone's viewpoint, come to an understanding of what you want to do. You're then going to be able to, people are going to be accountable. They're going to commit to the goal. And that's really important. And that's then going to get you the results.
So you don't focus on the results. If you do all this right, you will get results. Is that what he's trying to say?
Yeah, exactly.
I really agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really agree with that. And this is why, for example, why one element of that, like the quality of the conversation, why I believe if we continue to have that, we will build the best product. Because if the quality of the conversation with the clients is right, we're going to get the bottom of the requirements about the why.
Oh, completely.
The biggest issue that you have as an inventor is when people give you solutions and you don't have the skills to really unpack and dive into really why you want this. Features important for you. Get to the requirements as opposed to let them tell you what the solution is. And so if you don't have a quality conversation, you will never have a right forum for you to be able to dig deep enough and get to the root cause.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's just one example. I mean, internally, my God, there's a billion reasons why it's a good thing, but just that part, in the sense that feeds directly into the technical thing, which is really the asset that we have and what makes Martian logic. So that's an example of if you do this step right, the results will come.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And so, like if we use it in the ML sort of space, if you build that trusted relationship with your clients, then obviously they'll feel safe to come to you and say, this thing doesn't work for me, or, I really love this thing and we could do more with that, or we could take that further. And they'll feel safe to kind of raise those things with you, right? Which is that conflict or conversation sort of element.
Yeah.
And then.
So right. It's like every community.
Yes.
But you and your clients internally, it's the same thing. That whole pyramid can be used in that community as well. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How you can use that pyramid almost. You can do micro pyramids of this pyramid, micro pyramids in almost every conversation, every engagement.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, the TEDx talk that Patrick Lencioni does is great. He's really entertaining. I highly recommend. But I found it certainly easy to like you say, to apply to lots of different ways that we work. And particularly because almost all of our good work that we do is done together. We are stronger together. We're doing collectively, great work and create, collectively making change.
I guess anywhere there's a collaboration
There is.
to achieve certain results, you can use that pyramid.
Yep, absolutely.
Even with two people. You need a minimum of two people, clearly.
Yeah. For a team.
Sorry, for collaboration. And I can see that. I can see these micro little pyramids everywhere.
Yes.
Not just one pyramid for the company. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, you could see them in everyday interactions, right? You could see them in each operating team as well as larger teams. You might have a management team who comes together who is waterfalling that in their teams as well. So, it's a really kind of interesting approach.
If you can help me explain this, I'm sure you can explain about. Maybe about 30 years ago, in the 90s, it's where a little interesting string of the culture started to emerge, whereby you see maybe a movie star, maybe an important person on TV. Back then it was only TV or radio, right? Having conversation, and they started to behave in a certain way. I'm going to use the word behavior, where we go, whoa, that's so unusual. Although it's all positive, I'll explain what I mean, but it's very different from the past. Prior to that is very polished, marketing kind of polished material. You're having conversation with people. They would be very careful with everything they say. They will never say anything negative about themselves. And it started to become more acceptable. I'm not sure who would have been the pioneers of that. Started to become acceptable that a highly successful person, one of the most successful in the world, in the top 10, 20, 50, and they can tell you about their weaknesses and, I suck at this, and I made that mistake, or I stuffed up that. And you go, wow, there's something inspiring about that. We could not probably understand why. In our psychology, we go, there's something attractive about this. I want to work with this guy. I want to talk to this guy. But this is exactly what we're describing right now, the psychologically safe environment for people to be able to speak that way and behave that way in an environment where they're speaking with their manager, the guy who has power over them. But can you see what I mean? What I'm saying is, psychologically in our mind as a human being, even back in the 90s when we started to see that, we used to be attracted to it without really understanding. Even if you're, what I'm saying, the average person is not exactly a psychologist, could not point the finger why, but I'm finding that character attractive.
Yeah.
I want to work with this guy.
Yeah.
I want to go out with this guy. I want to hang out with this guy.
Yeah.
But now I can see why probably our brain told us that. And this is really what we're discussing here, the whole thing about being able to be comfortable to say, my bad, or here's an idea. Oh, don't worry, it's a shitty idea. We laugh about it and we move on without any consequences. No one make you feel like an idiot. If anything, your manager even supports you. No, you know what? I'm really glad you said that, because I actually gave me some interesting ideas. But yeah, maybe not for this project, and we move on. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so interesting how we are naturally, organically attracted to this kind of environment for us to really strive.
Yes, yes. And what you're talking about there is called vulnerability-based trust, right? So it's this amazing kind of concept of trust works so well when the leader goes first and the leader is vulnerable. And that's exactly what you said, putting your hand up and saying, my bad, I muffed up there, I didn't get that thing in. And obviously if your leader's doing that all the time, that's not just, we don't want people saying, oh,
you got to be able to say you did something right occasionally.
I forgot to do that report too. Yeah, sorry, everyone. There's a line there, but that trust is formed when you see someone as a human, right? And we're so programmed to want to understand others or understand what's going on in the room or in the moment.
So if there's a shield, you feel it in your brain. There's something plastic there. We're not really getting inside that person. It's just giving us a polished picture. It's not the truth.
That's it. And, this is really interesting. We had a conversation with one of our providers recently, and we always say, whenever we talk with all of our partners, tell me what you're seeing in market, like what trends are you seeing? And they were saying to us, one of the things that we're seeing is that video content that's really real, that is not polished marketing content, is really resonating with people now, and it's getting a lot more impressions and a lot more click through. So literally, someone with their phone, just talking to camera. And let's say this is in a recruitment process. So somebody just saying, hey, everyone, I'm coming to you today from the Gledswood Hills office, and I'm just going to take you on a quick tour of our office. And then, it might be a high speed sort of thing, but they walk up the stairs and they show you it's a really nice environment, and go through the office and have a look at the facilities and everything else. And that kind of content is getting, getting picked up much.
You're right. There's some similarity
quicker.
between my point and this point.
Yeah.
Very
Than this
interesting.
very polished kind of marketing content.
That vulnerability.
Yeah. Vulnerability-based trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's where the leader goes first. And I think it's so important.
We're not perfect.
No. And we shouldn't profess to be, right?
No environment is perfect. No office is perfect. No person is perfect. No leader is perfect. See what you mean?
Yeah. And I've noticed this with my team. I have a wonderful team, and I pretty much think of everyone that I work with as my team. But when you can be vulnerable with people and establish that trust really quickly, it's actually amazing how much more they'll share with you,
Of course.
how much more invested they'll be,
Of course.
how much more they want to share the goal with you, whatever the goal is, and it's actually really powerful. I've seen it. Yeah.
I want to talk to a psychologist about this topic. I want to make that whole podcast. Why, part of like evolutionary psychologists, about why we are attracted to, let's say, in a work environment, to be working with someone who is comfortable to show vulnerability and stuff like that. Where does that come from evolutionary wise? What makes us more comfortable to be around that person?
That'd be very interesting.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Because I started to see it in the culture in the 90s. I'm not sure if you agree. I mean, I'm a bit older than you, so I maybe observed it for longer.
Maybe a pinch.
But would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Before that, everything was so perfect and polished. Any successful person would come in with the perfect hair, everything perfect, everything's rehearsed. There's no vulnerability in the conversation, whether it's radio or television. And then it started to happen in the 90s. Pulp Fiction came out in the 90s. Jurassic Park was a lot of change of culture. Simpsons.
Yes.
Self-criticizing the politicians and the culture and us and whatever. All that happened in the 90s.
Yes. And
right?
I remember, watching, I think it was The Secret Life of Us. Was that TV series, Australian TV? Yeah. And, comparing it to Friends, and Friends kind of seemed like a lot more polished, and they always had sort of quippy one-liners and whatever. Whereas The Secret Life of Us, I remember thinking, oh, these are just real people. Like,
it was a fantastic show, one of the best Australian shows of all time.
Yeah,
Melbourne out of Victoria, wasn't it?
Yes, yep. And I think Claudia Carvin was in it, Deborah Malman.
Yes.
The amazing.
iPhone has just came out, and they used to see that stupid ring, the first ring ever the iPhone invented most of the time. I remember that. It's a fantastic show.
Yeah, so it kind of stays with you because I think those people were just so real.
Yes, we connected with it like never before.
Yes, and maybe that's kind of
that's the cultural shift I'm talking about.
Yes.
That's a perfect example. Thank you.
Yeah. Secret Life of Us.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Very good. Excellent. So we talked about the strengths. We talked about high performance teams. And you referred to a book by, and that talks about the pyramid, which is trust and conflict, commit, accountability, and results. Should we move now into the next point as part of this whole creating culture and an environment and a process to move people from good to great, which is, I think you pointed out something, communicating the vision. Is that right?
Yes.
You want to talk about it now in that order?
Yes.
Go for it.
So that was, that's really kind of around the strategy or the vision for the team. So like if we just think about it as just a team, perhaps there's a team leader and 5 people in the team, and they could be a development team, they could be,
any
technical team, anything at all. Then, that team naturally wants to understand where we're going. They want to know that their daily work is connected to something else.
Yeah.
That it's kind of contributing to a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And, I think when we can set that strategy with them, you're going to get people more invested behind that bigger vision that you're trying to achieve. And so naturally their performance will also, you might find that the momentum from this good to great really starts to get moving because they're like, okay, I see where we're going. I see the vision. I kind of see how I'm going to contribute to that and what I can do to get us there. And I think that's really powerful. And I think as leaders, sometimes we actually get caught up in the operations, right? I'm sure we've all been guilty of it in one time or another, where we get kind of caught up in the day-to-day and what we're doing and focused on delivery. And sometimes we actually don't stop and say to our team, this is what we're aiming for. Like, this is what we're going for. This is why we do these daily tasks.
Okay, so can I just for us, for me, and perhaps audience to understand this better, should I assume that now that you've identified strengths and you spent some time of creating a nice balance in any particular team or collaboration with different people that complement each other's strengths. Let's say you've ticked that box, you've built that pyramid to create that high performance team environment. And now we are talking about communicating the vision. So you're saying even if you do all of those two, still that team need to see where they're going. They need to see their little team, although it could be tiny compared to the big picture of the entire company, say 5 people out of 2,000, they want to see how they are contributing to the whole vision, to where this is going.
Yeah, that's it.
And why is that important for them? Why would that impact their performance? Why would that be positive?
Yeah, I mean,
Not as if I can't intuitively see why, of course, but I would like you to see maybe what science says or evidence or anything like that. How does that work?
yeah, and I think, asking yourself, why would I get up out of bed in the morning and go to work?
Yeah. The purpose we talked about.
Why would I do that? Why would I go to work? What am I doing? Am I here to
Well,
count
I'm getting
beans?
paid. I'm enjoying the work with my staff to complete a result. I like getting things done. I'm learning along the way, improving my career. I'm getting paid fairly. I'm hanging out with a bunch of people I like.
Yeah,
It's fun.
yeah.
So is it that important to
have
I'm
purpose
challenged
at
at that
work.
point right now. Yeah. So if
Yeah.
all of these, because you asked the question, why should I get out of bed? I'm disagree with that a little bit. I'm going, well, already, if we've done those two things before, that's already pretty good reason to get out of your bed, especially if you're getting paid fairly to afford your lifestyle. So fun environment at work, respectful, decent environment, and fun meaning you can say your piece, you can have a good communication without feeling, threatened or whatever, and you're getting paid fairly. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons. So why would this? How does this piece fit in the puzzle? Why it's it accelerates the whole motivation and performance?
Yeah, look, I think and I'm probably going to slaughter this, but in terms of human behavior, we are pack animals or team animals or collectives.
Sure, I agree with that.
And so we kind of want to understand where we're going together, and
we know where we're going together as a team. The 5 people. I'm using an example of 5 people.
Yes.
We know what we're trying to achieve. The manager's telling us about the task every week and every month and every quarter, but we're not necessarily we know how that fits within the company's vision.
Within the bigger picture.
Is that a big deal? Why does that make it even more motivating if I know that?
Look, I think that some people think that they have communicated that vision, but they haven't, and if you ask their team's like, I'm not really sure where we're going. I know what I'm working on today and next week and kind of broadly what might be coming up in 2 months' time, but beyond that, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm waiting for the leader to just tell me what to do.
Why is that so a big deal if you're having fun at work, getting paid fairly?
I think it does depend on the individual.
As a professional, you're sharpening your craft every day. You feel the safety of employment. You're employable all the time because you're sharpening that craft and those tools.
Yes.
That's plenty already, no?
I think for some people it will be, but for others, they might want more. They might want to feel connected.
Would you use the word purpose in this conversation? It creates more of a purpose when they see how this little dot, the 5 people team in a 2,000 people company, I'm saying that's almost a dot, how does that contribute in every respectful way to that journey the whole company's taking?
That's
which
right.
Which is really, I'm assuming that's what you're saying.
Yes, yeah. And look, it is going to be different because every person will come at it from a different point of view, right? And remembering that we've got the whole person that we're thinking about. So it's not just the work persona. People might be highly motivated, high performers, really want to push the dial, do great things, be working hard. And then something happens in their personal life. And it means that they can't concentrate at work or they're not sleeping. And then their performance is slipping. So, there's an element of individuality here that's really
I'm hearing
important.
so far. Where does that come in, though?
Yeah.
Where does this point come in, the big picture? Knowing what their team, that dot sits in the big picture.
Yeah, look, I think, do we want to
Because that whole
feel,
focus is such an important point for me. I would love to do even a whole podcast with you about that focus. It's such an interesting point. So
yeah,
you brought it up in here in the context of we were talking about, though, unless not necessarily you meant it that way. I'm sorry if I'm insinuating something you didn't mean. We're discussing communicating a vision, showing where that team
is going.
is going and why their
Yes.
work contribute. How does it contribute to the overall strategy of the company?
So, like, let's take a HR team, for example. You have obviously tasks that need to be done, routine tasks, and perhaps that could be recruitment, or it could be, generating letters, or it could be anything at all, right? A performance cycle. You've got your routine sort of seasonal things that are happening all the time on a regularly, sort of on a regular calendar, I guess. And then, you have your projects, right? The things that are new or changing, and you're working on kind of, it might be we're going to introduce a new recognition framework, or we're going to introduce a new performance review cycle, or we're going to take the opportunity to focus on compliance and actually tidy up kind of all of our employee files or our compliance or whatever it is, whatever the project is. And I think for some people, they can get caught in kind of feeling like they're just stuck in the seasonal stuff. They're stuck in the day to day. They're doing the same old things all the time. And they don't have an idea of what the bigger picture is. Why am I doing this stuff? What change am I making?
Do you, from my understanding about this, Alex, if I can just try and see if I understood it right and use the HR example, there's a difference between saying you're doing recruitment as opposed to you're being part of a team who's supporting this division of a couple of hundred people whose their mission is to do blah, 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 maybe the sales folks, the entire sales and marketing infrastructure there. And your job is to recruit and retain and create the perfect environment for these folks to work in a company. There's a bit of a mission here. There's a bit of a big picture understanding why you're recruiting and why you're doing this and why you're doing it. Is that maybe?
But who is telling us what that mission is? Who's saying how valuable that work is? Who's saying how that contributes to how the organization achieves its goals?
I'm sorry, I might have not explained it properly, but and I know that's such a small, naive idea that 20,000 years ago you thought about it, but because it's so naive. But what I'm trying to say is the difference between saying, "Oh, you work in recruitment," as opposed to you're part of a team that supports that division to be the perfect division, supporting those 10, 15 leaders and their respective 100 people to recruit and retain the best people in the company.
And that's the difference between...
There's a difference already. You've told them what their vision is, as opposed to you just recruiting.
That's right. Yeah. And that what you're talking about there is articulating a vision. So what you're doing is connecting in what our daily work
I'm agreeing with you.
With something else. Yeah. Something bigger, right?
That's interesting.
And we can get caught up in the operations, in the doing, and actually forget to say...
I mean, recruitment. I mean, my God, you're right. I'm seeing what you're saying now.
Yes. So I do think that... there's something special about recruitment, isn't there? The opportunity to bring people into a team.
Sure, but being part of a team that you're saying, I'm supporting this division because we want that division to go from here to there in terms of their retention, in terms of their quality of the conversation, as a blah, blah, blah. And part of that in recruitment, I'm ticking all these boxes. I'm going to contribute for that division to become that in the next 2-3 years.
Yes.
Not just I'm recruiting.
That's right. That's right. And, not just that, but like maybe I'm hiring someone who's going to be the future COO or CEO. And I'm kind of setting the organization up for sustainability in the future or for success in the future. So I think it is the positioning around what you're doing and the why as well. And that is the intentional activity that great leaders do is...
Intentional activity.
It's the intentional kind of... working with your team to say, this is what we're doing and where we're going. This is why we're doing that stuff. Like I was talking to my team today and I said to them, we've been working on getting all of our position descriptions done. So we've got a really solid understanding of all of our roles, which we're then going to take into some career path planning work and creation of job families and career paths. which is that technical management sort of stream and everything else. And we have to have done the solid work on the PDs to get to the really solid work on the career path and articulating that, which then gives us the chance to move beyond that and look at succession planning, which is for our critical roles and really for any of our roles, how are we going to make sure that we're sustainable long term? Now, you don't just have that succession planning conversation just off the bat. There's that preparation that's required to get to that really solid conversation and setting the strategy with the team, saying this is why we're doing what we're doing right now is because this is where we're going, is I think a really powerful activity that we shouldn't underplay. We should be doing that on a regular cadence.
I agree.
It could be quarterly.
I agree.
It depends on your team.
Like
could be yearly.
Janine needs to I'm definitely agreeing with you now, and I've come around to the idea. Janine needs to always, at every opportunity in client-wide meetings, to emphasize to everyone how everybody's job affects everybody else's job.
Yes.
She used to be a big, advocate of that. She used to always to be the voice of that. Every time I say, do you want to say something, Janine? Just want to remind people how, when you build a good product, you're making the salespeople look good. And when the salespeople do their job, we get money in the company so we can hire more developers and we can hire more account managers. And when the account manager does their job, it's how she connects all that, part of that vision of what we're and yeah, I can see that. I can see why.
Yeah. I'm going to go a little bit off topic here and just, this is a conversation I was having the other night. And there's this thing called the egg theory, which is that, we're all the same person. So just imagine for a minute that you and I are actually the same being, right? And so in all of our daily interactions, we're being kind or not kind or cruel or whatever to ourselves. And if we, right? So just a different way to frame
First time I hear it.
Yeah. So this is not, so it's not this concept of other.
Yeah.
It's just a full concept of self. So, and there's a good little infographic on this egg theory, but I think that is to what Janine's saying is that we are all connected, right? And everything that we're doing is impacting every part of the operation. And if we treat everyone else like self, then we want the very best for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And it's not for somebody else to worry about. And
this
is
so interesting.
This is this accountability piece of the Patrick Lencioni model is like, when we take accountability for something, we say it's mine to deliver. I am invested in delivering it. And maybe we're delivering it with multiple people. It's not just ours, but it's where we say, I want to do that. I am taking, that responsibility. I'm going to deliver that thing. And, I think that setting that vision, helps us with all those other activities. It helps kind of connect everything back to why we're here and what we're doing.
Very interesting. Yeah, no. I appreciate that take on what I said. Yeah, brilliant. Brilliantly done. Okay, goal setting.
Yes.
Goal setting was the next point.
Yeah, goal setting.
Okay, so we've got the pyramid going. We had the strength mapping and we built the teams to complement each other with strengths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we, on a regular basis, we communicate a vision. Now, goal setting. It's a very interesting topic for me. Very interesting.
Do you guys set goals here?
Sorry?
Do you set goals? Have you got individual goals?
We do, not necessarily in a formal way. But now, because I'm on that journey of learning more about high-performance teams and because of our product, the performance management product, we're speaking with so many people and they constantly talk about goal setting. And we're building the goal setting feature to be an automatic intelligent object when you've dropped it in your performance review, it's just going to automatically say, okay, do you have any goals you want to set on this occasion? And on the next meeting, it's going to be, okay, you need to review those. And it's intelligent like that. It's got multiple properties to it, the name of the goal, and maybe what will happen if you don't meet this goal. You can add your own properties to it, an intelligent object that just does all that. So I'm learning about all that, but I still don't understand it really, really well because I haven't practiced it in the company really well.
Got it. Yeah, look, and I think some people are so clever at thinking on the fly, aren't they? They kind of keep up in their head, this is what I'm working on, these are my goals, and this is where I'm up to, and they can articulate that at any given point in time. But, if that person's sick or they suddenly leave the business for a period of time, it can be hard to know kind of where that's up to. And I think for me, goal setting, I kind of think of it like a hygiene thing. I know that not everyone will feel that way about it.
I'm
but
listening.
like
Why? Show me how
sleep.
that analogy works.
So like sleep, like exercise, these are like good hygiene things, like in terms of good things that are good and healthy for us, right? Is to have a good amount of sleep, to move our bodies, to eat nutritional food, and to set goals. And I know lots of people will not see those in the same category there, but I actually think that's been a really important realization for me throughout my career, is when I've got really clearly articulated goals that my leader and I are really aligned on, I'm much more motivated to achieve those, and I move towards those goals much quicker. And in more instances than not, I'll overshoot or excel or exceed the expectations of that goal, because I'll be so motivated to achieve it. I'll achieve it before time, or I'll move past what we said we'd do.
It's not necessarily bad.
No, it's a good thing.
Okay.
It's a good thing. So like if we
Just
said
wanna
that we
make
were
sure.
going to go for 5 new clients, and I'll get to 5 and
Yeah.
then go, why not push to 7? Why not
Amazing.
push to 10?
Because you were clear on the goals and why is that a good thing, and why the impact of it, the positive impact of it, the importance of it.
That's it. So we know intuitively sleep is good for us, right? But does that mean that we get off our phones, at 10:30 at night and go and get to sleep and have, that good time? We intuitively know moving our bodies in whatever way works is good for us. And I really do think that goal setting is in that category for me, that, it's good for us to kind of articulate what it is we're going for, to be clear on it, for it to be transparent, for it to be in a place where people can look at it and share the goal transparently with each other. And I that has certainly, the times in my life where I have had the goals in my head versus the times that I've had them written down somewhere, the difference has been enormous for me. So, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway there is get those things down. So, lots of people do this vision mapping thing, right? For work or for personal.
I'm not really sure if
you've heard of that?
Remind me. Vaguely, I must have heard of it in the past. Rings a bell, but remind me.
So they might, say, okay, what are we going to achieve? Like, let's just say it's a couple who are doing it, and they say, what are we going to do this year? What are we going to achieve? What's our budget going to be? What are our goals going to be? Okay, we're saving for a house, so we want to go on a holiday, to Thailand or wherever. And then, what do we need to do to achieve those goals? Okay, we're going to pull back on this.
That's vision mapping?
Yeah,
is that what they call it?
Vision setting, vision mapping.
Okay. Oh, vision. Okay.
Yeah, just planning ahead.
As in long term,
Yeah, right. And I just think that when you kind of have an idea in your head, there's only so far that it can go, unless you're one of those exceptionally clever people who can keep it all up there with all the other information swirling around.
Right.
Having it written
it's
down.
Erased. You forget about it. Yeah.
And the thing for me too is that, as we, as people and culture teams, we want people to have these kind of really good conversations with their leaders. And of course, we get caught up in the busy stuff, right? So if we write down our goals, it's really clear what the goal was, what it is, and what we're going to be measured against.
Definitely.
Whereas once again, if we had a verbal conversation 12 months ago, between the two of us, our recall of that conversation will be slightly different.
Yeah.
And we'll be therefore unclear on the goal.
Yeah. If I'm asking you a question, I want to learn this from you.
Yeah.
As part of building the product. So I've learned from a client, and I want to see your opinion about that. In Perth last year, a great client of ours, very intelligent woman, she said to me, Anwar, I don't think that, oh my God, that was actually a slightly different point, but it's still interesting. She said to me, if we don't believe that the manager should see the submission of the employee before they put their own rating or opinion.
So like a self-reflection. So the employee does a self-reflection.
Sure. So you've got a performance review and a bunch of questions, whatever they might be. Some of them rateable questions, some of them aren't, whatever that is.
Yeah.
The employee submits them. You're right. You call that self-reflection. Sure. The employee's rating themselves in a sense.
Self-rating.
Sure. Then it comes to the manager to do that. She doesn't believe the manager should see what the employee said until they put their own thing in there. Once they've done that, then they, of course, they can see what the employee did, and then they can have the meeting, and the manager will finalize their position about it. But in terms of what's from the auditing and the health and the equity of the process, although both are going to be kept and all that, they shouldn't see what the employee submitted until they do theirs. Do you agree with that? Do you have any opinion on that?
Look, let's reframe that in a different conversation.
Yes, please.
If you and I are trying to agree on a budget, I am going to go away and work on the budget for the organization, and you're going to go away and work on it. And then we're going to come together and compare our two copies of the budget. And we're going to have to kind of come together and wrangle it out in a meeting, aren't we? To kind of be like, well, I thought we should do it this way. And you'd be like, well, this is what I've done.
So I shouldn't see yours until I've brought mine. So imagine a piece of paper is supposed to be editable. Both need to bring into the piece of paper, swap the papers in that meeting, and then discuss it. I agree with that.
But if we do that, then number one, we have owned our version.
Yeah.
And we're going to be pretty tight on it. So it might mean that we're actually less open to feedback. So because we've created our version, we actually think it's the best version, potentially. And we might be a little bit less open to feedback on it. And the second thing...
you can always be doing that, but isn't it better than actually you being lazy and doing nothing, wait for them to do all the work and steal it and then come in and still on top of that tell them that you're some professor about something, give them a lecture? In the sense that probably is one of the reasons she's saying that. I still like what she said, even in your example, Alex.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing too is that I think exchanging the two budgets, let's say, or the two performance reviews in the meeting doesn't give people adequate time to prepare. So
that's a separate point though, because the technology can allow for that, can make it win-win. As long as you lock in your response, you could do that 30 days, let alone a day or two before the meeting. That's another story. But you've put your voice in without seeing mine.
Yes.
So that's the kind of equity. I don't know if it's called equity or not, but that's the point she was making.
Yeah,
I tend to agree with her.
Independent opinion, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And so
because you're sort of influenced otherwise, or you're copying, or you. Okay, I said to someone, an interesting example of that would be if the employee said, I think I'm 2 out of 5 on this thing.
Yes.
And you go, and if you don't like that employee, you go, oh, okay, so that's great. I can give her 2 then. Even if you think she's 4, she's happy with the 2, I'll give her 2.
Yeah.
Even if I think she's 4.
So bias creeps into the process.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
You see what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
If in his mind thinks that she's going to say 4 and I really think it's 4, I'll put 4.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
She happened to be too humble about this. Oh, yeah, I'll use it against her.
Yeah. And I think you would have to judge, whether this process would work for you in your organization based on the people that you have,
But
right?
why would you do it otherwise? Do you have any reason? I know I'm putting you on the spot. If you don't have an opinion on a topic, we can move on. But why would you do it otherwise? I really like that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an opportunity to build on people's ideas, right? So, this is the opportunity that you miss out on if you both create your ideas and you're fairly firm on your ideas. Then you miss the opportunity to kind of.
Why would you have to be firm? No one is saying you get firm or not firm.
Yeah, but
that's a separate point.
It could be a
just because you put
point,
your independent opinion doesn't mean you're firm or not firm.
But let's say
it's got no reflection on that.
Let's say, and this happens, this happens where people say, I'm a 5 out of 5 on everything. And the leader's like, I'm unsure how you got to that rating
but
because
that can still happen no matter what the process is, whether the leader can see the response first or not. That kind of attitude and wrong mindset and blah, that is a separate point in parallel to this, to the fairness of the process. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, and I think it's important for people to independently have an opinion on the performance process. So,
would you do it this way or that way?
Yeah, well, we have a self-reflection process, and it is transparently visible to the employee and the leader. And we have
before the leader says their opinion.
Yeah, the leader can actually submit, let's just say the employee doesn't get to their self-assessment. The leader can submit their review without it. They can, because they're independently doing it, and the employee is independently doing those. And we obviously hope that both are doing their review. So we've got the two opinions that are coming together. We've got the self-assessment and the rating, the manager review. But if one doesn't do it, the other one can actually still submit their
Sure,
part.
sure.
Yeah.
That's a separate point, though,
Yeah.
Alex. No,
But in that
they're both doing
instance-
it, and no meeting until the both submissions have been done. Then you've got the meeting. Yeah. The point I think we're making here is those two submissions that will be required before you go into the meetings are done in an independent way where people are doing it
Yes.
without seeing the other person's response. Then they come into the meeting and can review, and then the manager will make the final decision about which will be really the company's position. It's the manager's position. That's the final submission. It's really the company's position, represented by the manager, whilst the equity here is the fact that the employee was able to state their opinion and comment and disagree and stuff like that, and it's all audited forever and stays there. I mean, what else would you do? So really, just that point of, as a manager, I could be lazy by just waiting for them to say, well, they are, yeah, okay, I'll agree, because I've got no even time to think about. When I'm having to look at it raw, I have to really think about this. Because I don't want to look stupid.
Yeah.
I need to. But if I like them, they're okay. Back to your point about what's the point? We're saying good. And and they said 4, 3, 2. I'll just agree and keep going based on what they said.
Yes.
I become lazy.
So I agree with you, right? I agree with what you're
Should be
saying there in
independent.
terms of the independence of completion of each stage of the review. The bit that I think is important is the transparency. So once that person, whoever they are, the employee or the leader, has clicked submit, the other person can view that.
That was always going to be the case.
Yes.
I was just saying whether before the manager submits their review, can they see the employees or not? That was the only point. But this is how it works.
Yeah. And, there's a richness that comes with people, independently, I guess, doing the work rather than, like you say, there's a risk that the leader might kind of riff off or build on the employee's work and kind of therefore not give a full and
consideration,
unbiased assessment. They might miss things, right? Because they're just adding or editing.
Just simple laziness as opposed to just evilness is bad enough. Just because I'm lazy, I'll agree with them because they're okay anyway. I'll keep going. I'm not really making an effort to contribute.
Well, the other thing that is interesting to talk about is rating. So that we're talking about the qualitative feedback, right? Which is kind of how did I go on this goal, and what I'm rating myself versus what my leader is rating and my progress against this goal, which I've clearly articulated and we both agree on. But then there's the other piece, which is, you've got calibration as well. So what happens? I mean, that's actually another important point, calibration. So in some organizations, what happens is the employee will do their review, the manager will do their review, and then it will go to calibration, which may change the rating. And calibration is intended to...
What do you mean? Explain to us what that means. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah. So calibration is intended to look at all of the reviews across the organization and to try and remove bias where it may exist in the process. So you'll always have some managers who will rate a little bit harder and perhaps some that will rate a little bit easier.
Sure.
And I'm sure we've seen this in teams where one leader has all their team is 5 out of 5s, but they didn't meet their budget and they missed out on 5 of their goals. So you kind of go, why are we all a 5 out of 5? If we, there's some key pieces of work that weren't completed.
So what's the calibration? You're saying it's an
smoothing
automatic
process. Yeah. So it's where leaders would sit down together, and every organization is sort of slightly different if they do a calibration process, which not everyone does. And they would sit down together and kind of smooth out the results. So the difficulty with calibration, something I've always found very tricky, is that as a leader and an employee, you have this great one-to-one conversation and you've agreed what the strategy is, you've agreed the goals, you've had your regular meetings, your one-to-ones throughout the year. You come into a performance review and as a leader, and you agree this person exceeds expectations, right? Then you go into calibration and this smoothing exercise happens.
I'm sorry, explain to us how the calibration works. So a bunch of people in that division, let's say 5 team leaders, they sit down and learn from each other and change their opinion based on that?
Potentially.
They say, oh, no, you might have been too hard on that. Look, I gave this person 4 out of 10 on the basis of the question was a blah and they did a blah. Here's the facts and I gave them blah. What do you think? Oh, man, no. That's a 3 at best or whatever.
Exactly.
And they help each other to be more on the same page instead of being too many outliers or something.
Correct. Yep. So they might say, you've given that person 5 out of 5, let's say, but there was a really significant safety incident and there was a performance concern and they missed out on achieving 3 of their goals. So on what basis have you come to that rating? I think it would be more logical if we pulled that back to a 3 out of 5 on the basis of that information, right? And calibration is really challenging, right? It does rely on your leaders knowing what's happening across other teams and across the business as well. And
I mean, if they are in that same division,
yeah,
like, for example, could be team leaders in sales, they're all doing the same thing. And the questions, as a matter of fact, should be even the same because it's all just different teams. But in sales, should be even the same survey questions where you call them. And so, no, I'm agreeing with you. I started to see how this point is possible. I
yeah.
guess,
So
because they just discussing that with other people who's doing the same thing, getting their views about why this is a 3 versus 5 or whatever. I think it can't be negative. It can always be a positive.
yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's
I
quite
like
a
the idea.
rigorous process, and it's absolutely good to have those kind of checks and balances in place. But what it can mean is that you actually destroy some of that trust, right? Because you have a conversation with your employee and you, as a leader, you want to give
Maybe
them
you have it before.
a rating. Well, this is all the timing's
Maybe you do it
important.
before, Alex. So when you
Yeah.
when you as a manager have to do it in an independent way, maybe you do it and the system allows you to edit it because it hasn't been finalized. You do it as a draft kind of thing, and still in the process of finalize your
Then you go to
independent opinion.
calibration with the draft.
And then
Yeah.
you finalize your independent opinion.
Yeah.
Then so you've got now your peers' opinion, you finalize your opinion, then you sit down with an employee and see why they might have any reason to make you change your mind, and you make a final decision. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yes. Well, I mean, sometimes the calibration decision is the final decision. So you might go into calibration saying, I'm rating my person as exceeds expectations.
So that's
and
at the
in
publishing,
calibration,
what we call the publishing. You're suggesting some people do it at the publishing. They've already had their independent opinion
conversations.
and the conversation, and that's the final position.
And then, the final position might be pulled back to meets, or it could be pulled up, but more often than not, it's pulled back. So,
And you're right, it does affect the trust.
yeah, because
You've had the conversation with them. Someone else in the business convinces you otherwise, and you change it. Ooh, that's what we discussed before, the
trust,
conflict and commit.
Yeah, high-performing teams, trust is so important. So, I think the performance process is interesting. And like the other point just before you got onto calibration was about the qualitative feedback and the quantitative feedback. So most performance processes have a qualitative and a quantitative element.
sure.
So the qualitative is, writing on my progress against my goals, let's say, or some development areas, some skills that I want to work on. And the quantitative is a rating of, which might be a 4-point scale, 5-point, or whatever it is in your organization. And that is often not shared with employees, that rating scale. And this is really interesting is as we think about progressing kind of this performance agenda in our organizations, how important is transparency in the process? How important is trust to having a really good outcome?
Very interesting. Definitely opened my mind about something there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because if that whole performance methodology determines if we're doing good performance, if what we're saying is good or what we're doing is good versus whether it's great. Yeah, so I think there's a really big piece for goal setting and performance reviews and all those good performance activities to play in that process.
So the goal setting, and in terms of you've convinced me definitely about the importance of goal setting. You've used a lot of examples, even at the personal level, as a couple, etc., in a team environment. And we sort of indirectly moved into how it could be used in a formal way, meaning as part of a performance review process.
Yeah.
And how do you set the goals? So there's a big difference between setting, you've got this whole thing about, goals need to be aligned with the company's goals, department's goals, and the company's goals. And there's a hierarchy that tells you what the goals are from the top, the board, and the vision is to be, passed down through all the branches kind of thing.
Yeah.
Goodness me, it sounds like a disaster of a thing to do. It's so complex and rigid.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to me sitting down with, but it's really interesting. We talked before about communicating a vision. So, for that dot, so to speak, that 5-people team, part of a 10,000 people company, which is a dot, on the map in the Sydney office, and it's a global company, 10,000 people. There's this little dot on the map of 5 people. For them to know how they are connected and the value they add to the overall success of the company, I guess you are saying indirectly, showing them the vision and goals of the company, where the company is going, and how their work will contribute to that, right? But what I mean, practically speaking, when you're sitting down with that team and you're doing performance review with them, I mean, it depends. Is that the weekly catch up to make sure you're constantly and early enough adjusting for folks with your team
Yes.
versus this sort of once every 6 months or every months, which is way too late for this, and it makes no
late.
sense anymore. I don't even know why people even do that,
Yeah.
as opposed to a survey
Hmm.
that you want to do, which is fine. But really, performance every 12 months, what the hell's that? You're only doing it because I don't know why you're even doing it.
Oh, yeah.
But really, to make an impact has to be weekly or every second week
That's
to make
right.
sure you're adjusting early enough
Yes.
coming back to check,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yep.
and having that accountability as well. Because
Yes.
I'm a big fan now. I've never known anything but performance reviews, and I've been forced to understand a little bit. I'm a huge fan. And internally, I'm using our product right now for able to do weekly catch up.
Yes.
And so if you're doing weekly catch up, Alex, and the idea is to help this person to be the best they can be.
Yep.
What I say to my leaders is, I want you to please on a Monday morning let everybody know what their goal, what they expected to achieve for the week.
Priorities.
Yep.
Yep.
And then at the performance, you review those, and that's one of the ratings. That's not everything. The task completion is just one element. The commitment in terms of hours, which is what we call it, the attendance or whatever, and then the focus, meaning the quality of that time that you spent working, and then finally what your task completion rate was, based depending on really what you actually do. So in saying that, the goal setting, can it be for a weekly catch up? The goal setting is really different, isn't it? It's like you want to run two different things. The goal setting should be doing it weekly, but you want to run maybe something every quarter about the overall goals for you.
Yes.
You said you want to be a team leader. You're a salesperson now. You want to be a team leader. Let's work for the next 12 months towards that.
A development goal. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then that runs separately to the weekly thing.
Correct. Because the way that I always frame it in my mind is weekly, you've got tasks, right? And so you have your weekly meeting where you're updating each other on the tasks that you're completing. Your goals should bridge a longer horizon. So they should be something you achieve in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and I don't actually have any goal setting I do with my team that goes over a year, right? Because it's
a waste of time.
It's a waste of time. We just need to be a bit more agile. So we organize.
Let's make sure we all live for 12 months. First sake.
So we organize ourselves into 90-day sprints, right? So and then we have a sort of halfway point around the 50-day mark, where we're saying, okay, how are we going with the progress against what we committed to doing in these 3 months?
Yes.
Yeah, good. We're on track. No, we're not. We're a bit off. There's a barrier. Great. Let's resolve that, move past it. And then at the end of the 3 months, which for my team is coming up in April. So Jan, Feb, March is our sprint. And then in the first week of April, we're reviewing. Did we get everything done? Yes. But that's not the only time we're reviewing it. We're obviously having weekly meetings where we're reviewing the tasks that form part of the goal. We've got one-to-ones where we're helping with that as well. And we've got these kind of ad hoc meetings where we might be addressing barriers that come up along the way. And then we have this kind of 3-month review. So it sounds like the cadence is a lot, but actually you'll find that these high-performing teams have these multiple touch points, so that the communication remains really open and it's continuous. And every team will be slightly different. If you've got a more agile organization, you might have daily stand-ups as well, as weekly.
Daily stand-up is not a performance thing. It's part of, interesting. I'd love your opinion on that. So this is sort of my high-level cultural instructions to my leaders, how they want to work with their people. So you set the task for the week on Monday morning, say, and then throughout the week, between that point and between that Friday afternoon when you're doing the review, that weekly catch-up review I'm talking about, You're really a support agent now. You're just
Mm.
supporting them. How can I help you? You give them the room and the space. You don't want to micromanage them. Let them make the mistakes. Let them try different things, etc. Just how can I help you? Well, how can I help you? The support system, yeah?
Yeah.
On that Friday afternoon is when you really want to change now. You become that manager that's the person that's holding them accountable. Because I gave you the room, you made mistakes. How are you going to fix it next week? What do you think you would do differently to succeed next week? Because I gave you the room, I gave you the support that you need, and you still got only 3 out of 5 tasks done. And we know I'm comfortable that this is enough, not too much for you, etc.
Mm.
So something went wrong here. Is it the focus? Is it the approach that you took? Did you make the wrong decisions? Did you work on the wrong things? Did you, etc.? Something has to explain what happened.
Yeah.
And that's
The
that accountability
diagnosis.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they will learn from that and do better than next week.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I think it depends on your role. I mean, there's
So that
some.
stand-up meeting. So back to your point. Sorry.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, it should not be whatsoever a stand-up meeting about you're not a manager anymore. You're more of a support system then.
Mm.
Do you agree with that, Alex?
Yeah, look, I really believe in giving people autonomy and agency over their work. And, like I said at the beginning, we have that kind of coaching methodology of working beside our leaders. We're not above, below, around. We're just standing beside them and helping them to do whatever they need to do, right? And so I think of performance as a bit of an all-in. So, those daily conversations, the task list, the operational work, the seasonal stuff that comes up, the one-to-one, the check-ins, whatever you call it in your organization, the performance reviews, the accountability check-ins, all of that, I think of that as all in performance. Goal setting, absolutely in the realm of performance. And I think having that kind of broader view then makes performance an even more important topic to discuss in your organization, because it is fundamentally how you're getting things done, but also what you're getting done and why you're getting it done. Why are you working on that? And that, is really tied in with why you exist as an organization. So I do, I think it's all kind of all in, and it's important for organizations to think about, what does performance look like for them? Like for you, it's a weekly process. For some teams, they won't be able to achieve their tasks in a weekly horizon. They'll need a month or 2 months or 3 months or, a longer sort of period of time to kind of meaningfully get work done. Some organizations will be able to have a task list and get it done in a week. So that kind of cadence is really important. And then everything that supports performance should reinforce that. So if you've got commission structure, for example, then it should kind of reinforce the performance that you're looking for, which is someone taking accountability and getting their, the agreed kind of list done. Then it should reinforce that. It should work together with it.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that answers your question. I kind of
No,
in a roundabout
it does.
way. Yeah,
there's so much to it anyway. There's an interesting element. Yeah.
Oh, we could keep talking about it for hours.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
we're not experts in our field, right? I mean, a psychologist would have a excellent view. A people scientist.
I've learned so much from you. It's not funny. Don't say that. It's been amazing already. Okay, what's the last thing you would like to still to add that you feel that I might have cut you off or whatever, you still want to say about this topic?
Oh, look, the final one that we had on there was around feedback. I'm a really big advocate for feedback, really big advocate for continuous loops of feedback. And I think, the times that, particularly when you've got a team member who's doing something new or learning to do something for the first time, giving them really specific feedback, de-blurring that feedback, being specific about the behavior, the impact, what are we going to do next, being curious about those questions, what can we do better next time. I've seen that in action result in people becoming really laser focused on what they need to repeat, i.e. what great performance looks like, versus things that aren't serving the organization, aren't serving their personal brand, and aren't getting us where we need to go. So I think it's very difficult to give really great the specific feedback sometimes, but it's absolutely something we should keep working at. And like I said, I use the feedback prep grid to prepare my feedback so it lands. And sometimes as I'm preparing it and talking through it, I realize that's not clear enough, and if I just said it in the minute, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to tighten that and make it better. And sometimes, you'll prepare that feedback and realize that's a bit harsh. I need to find another way to say that. It's coming across a bit harsh.
Okay.
So, I really just think that feedback, we should be building our feedback muscle by giving feedback regularly, by pulling for feedback, requesting it.
Your gut feel, it's an area that's very underestimated across the board, yeah?
Yes.
In corporate Australia.
Yeah, and I am not the expert on this by any means. I'm still working on this.
You feel it's not talked about enough, not done enough, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that it's a really tangible kind of thing that can really revolutionize your organization. But once again, you have to have the trust there so that the feedback can be received.
100%.
And the psychological safety so that when someone tells you something, and specific feedback too, you understand that it's coming from a place of wanting us to grow together or wanting us to be better together rather than wanting to be critical of another person. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Last thing is the trust seems to be it is the base of the pyramid, right? It's the number one thing. Without it, we can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
We can't do anything in terms of that journey to go from good to great. So if you were to summarize trust into 3 words or 3 things, meaning a few words, few bullet points, what would they be? Take a moment. How would you summarize trust in a team environment?
The leader goes first, I think is really important, and build vulnerability-based trust. That's 2 really important, good places to start. And just understanding that it is at the basis of everything. And
Base of that pyramid.
yeah, and that's for a reason, right? That pyramid you can't build for a foundation if your foundation is cracked.
Love it.
Yeah.
Let's go to conflict. So after trust in that pyramid, we've got the conflict that sits on top of trust. Summarize it for the folks in also 3 bullet points. In the sense, sort of action-based summary. So imagine you've got this meeting going on with the 5-people team we keep saying, and the leader. So that's 6 people in the meeting. And how do you demonstrate that you are or you have succeeded as a manager to build a healthy conflict-based discussion? What are you looking for? What are those 3 metrics that you need to demonstrate every day?
Yeah, look, I think it's important to hear from everyone. So if you're in a meeting and you see that somebody hasn't contributed to the conversation,
prompt them, get them to say something,
invite them in, bring them. Yeah, everybody has something to contribute. If they're in that meeting and they're not contributing, why are they there?
But then again, prompting them probably not the solution. You really need to, after the meeting, try to think and speak with them about why they're not talking. Are they afraid? You haven't built that trust-based?
Yeah, potentially.
Maybe they're still thinking if they say something controversial, they're gonna be fired, or it's going to be used against them or something, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be a reason why they're not speaking.
And conflict is not a dirty word. Conflict is good. You want to be having great conversations. There's
Healthy conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of research.
That's where good ideas emerge.
Yeah, that's it. You actually want to, with trust, test each other and strive for the best solution. And when you have trust, you know that the other person is there with you, right? They're working with you to get to the very best outcome. They're not being critical of you.
To demonstrate it, I'm still on that topic. Give people an example of a leader, how they would react to someone as part of that conflict-based conversation. I'm going to even word healthy. I shouldn't really have to qualify, but just in case people associate, it's got a connotation, conflict. So we want to make people think that, it's a healthy conflict, meaning people are speaking their mind.
Yeah,
They're
totally.
not having to sugarcoat things. That's really what we're saying here, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And you sugarcoat when you fear consequences, like, people describe that as walking on eggshells, et cetera, right? So it all comes down to the trust. And I think people understand that so far. Just as one demonstration, one example of how you handle something that's so controversial, opinion is so controversial or so dumb, or of how you'd be a good leader when you're practically practicing a conflict-based conversation.
Yeah, look, I do think that it depends on the type of meeting you're having, firstly. So if you're having a blue sky meeting, then you set the expectation going in that all ideas are welcomed. The point is not to vet the ideas, it's to generate the ideas. So, the vetting process will happen later. We'll pick the ideas that are better, but we're not shutting off any ideas.
Yeah.
So it really does depend on the scope of the conversation that you're having. If you're having a conversation about this is the path that we're going down, then you might welcome suggestions and feedback and input. But as a leader, you might not be able to change all of that path based on the input. So you might need to make a captain's call, as an example, and say, I hear you. I hear that's a struggle. This is what we can do around those things. But it doesn't mean that we're just not doing that thing that we don't like or that's been challenging.
Interesting what you said about setting the boundaries from the very beginning, the blue sky concept. I haven't... it doesn't mean anything if I haven't heard about it. I keep saying I'm not an expert at the topic, and I'm an accidental manager. I'm someone who just loves creating products, right? So it's interesting for me that I thought was a bit of a like, you can't say to people this is a psychologically safe environment, and yet you're in a meeting. Someone says something, you have to say this is not the right meeting for it. You know what I mean? What's the balance of that? How do you handle as a manager when you've got someone who said some interesting idea, but you in your heart believe, oh my God, this is such a distraction. We told you this meeting's about blah, blah, blah. We have 5 minutes to go. This is going to mean $500,000 worth of sales for the business. And we only have 5 days ago. And this guy's talking about something so interesting and good idea, but definitely has nothing to do with this meeting. How do you handle that?
Yeah, look, I think it's setting the scope at the start of the meeting. So being really clear about, guys, what we're here today to do is to talk about X. We're going to debate these 3 things and we're going to agree on something by the end of the meeting. I mean, sometimes when I'm in my leadership meetings, I say to people, I'm presenting a paper, I'm presenting a new concept or a process or whatever. And I say to everyone, this is your opportunity to comment on it. This is the time that I'm inviting you to give feedback. And at the end of this 10-minute segment or 20 minutes or whatever it is, we will be agreeing and committing. So this is the way that we are going forward. So now is your chance to provide feedback. And that's how you can keep things, quite tightly bound, but also say to people, it's not the opportunity in 2 weeks' time to chat about that. The opportunity is now.
So to be a good chairman of the conversation can coexist with the concept of it's a psychologically safe environment. Just because you can say, look, I'm really sorry, although this is a good idea, but not relevant to this, that is not necessarily it's not a psychologically safe place. It's how you handle them, is it?
Yeah, and it's the purpose of the conversation. So if you're setting that purpose up front really, really clearly with people, if a great idea comes up, like in your example, you could say, love that. That's a bit of out of scope for the conversation today. Let's park it. I mean, we have what we call the car park, right? Which is just a strange way of saying it's a whiteboard, an electronic whiteboard that sits on the side. And we kind of go, that came up during the conversation. We don't want to derail what we came here to talk about, but it's important for us to come back to it at a later time.
I'm so sorry. Maybe I got distracted. How is the car park illustrates that? Sorry.
Yeah, so it's just called a car park, and it's basically we need to park that idea somewhere.
Yes.
We're just so like, let's say we're having a really kind of scoped conversation about a new product, right? A new product, the development of a new module. And I say to you, I've got this really good idea about how we can, get more client engagement. We can partner with more clients. They say, great, love that idea. Let's put it in the car park.
Got it.
We're going to move it over here. We'll come back to it.
We say the word park it, but that's what it is. Yeah,
it's out of the scope of this meeting.
Can we park this point?
Park it.
Sure. Sorry. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. You have been amazing. I've learned a lot from you. I really hope people will learn from you as well. And I hope it opened your mind about a few things that you're working on
Oh,
right now with this focus of yours now. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's, we're all on this learning journey,
Yeah.
right? No one is complete or done or the expert
Yeah.
on everything.
Yeah.
We all have a little bit of wisdom
Yeah.
to share. And it's when we, can get together and share
Yeah.
it and question each other with trust. You can have that really constructive conversation and say, well, what do you think? And I think this, and what about
my
that?
God.
And
What we're
we're doing the
discussing.
pyramid right now.
Yeah. To your point, to your point, what we are talking about here, whether you as an HR leader or myself as a CEO, we're talking about creating the perfect environment for a human being to the tune of 8 hours of 5 days a week of their life. My God,
Yeah.
it's an enormous task. It
Well,
never finishes. It's never perfect.
and also how many times do you think about work outside of those 8 hours? Making sure that people know what good looks like, know what great looks like, know what performance means to you here, can only result in clarity and transparency, which is good for any business to have.
Yep. Alex, you are amazing. Thank you for your time. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Goodbye, everyone.